Hello and welcome to another episode of On Board with Cruise Passenger. I'm Rose Kelly, your host.
And I'm Peter Lynch, publisher of cruisepassenger.com.au and Cruise and Travel magazine. Today, this special episode of On Board examines the crisis facing Australian crews.
This is a breaking story, Peter. It's an amazing story of how to turn success into, something else.
Today, we see record demand from Australians who want to jump on cruise ships, yet cruise capacity for 2026 could be down by as much as 30%.
And not by choice from our loyal cruise fans.
Absolutely.
It sounds astonishing, right? So more people do want to cruise.
They do.
But there will be less opportunity to get on board because there will be fewer ships.
Yes, Rosie, and Adelaide and Melbourne are big losers. There won't be any home-ported ships, so cruise fans from these great cities will have to fly to Sydney or Brisbane.
I don't imagine that they're going to be too happy about that. It's crazy, really.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that cruising from your city without the cost of flights is one of the big benefits.
It's certainly what spread cruise across Australia. But it's not as simple as one problem. On the one hand, it is indeed disadvantaging thousands of cruise fans, just as our cruise industry is really taking off. Shortly, we'll be talking to the head of Cruise Lines International Association Australasia, Joel Katz, about the problems that are driving ships away, just as Australians are falling back in love with cruising.
Yeah, and this news does come off the back of the news about our beloved 92-year-old P&O Australia brand that has now merged with distinctly American line Carnival.
Yes, Rose, very sad. Of their 3 ships, 2 will be kept rebadged as Carnival, but Explorer, the ship that restarted cruise in Australia with that unforgettable arrival in Sydney Harbour with a Weirback flag on its bow, is being sold
I remember
off.
that moment. It was so iconic. People
Me
were
too.
so excited.
I'd just like to say that I've sailed on P&O Australia many times, and I've spent many hours with its leaders, Anne Sherry, who brought it back from the brink, and Stormy, who managed it into the brand we know today. And it has real meaning for Australians.
I mean, we know that cruise fans, they have a real loyalty to certain ships or cruise lines. And we've literally had hundreds of comments and social media posts about this. So absolutely do please message us your thoughts or concerns. And this is the place for that discussion.
Yes, David Jones, a long-time employee of P&O, put it very nicely. P&O Australia democratised cruising. It made it accessible for families across the nation. Did you know it was called the nursery?
Well, I did not know that, Peter, but I know I've certainly cruised both with my very young children when they were a little younger and also with my mother who's now in her 80s. So do we refer it to the nursery for the children or for the seniors? I'm not sure.
That could be it. So Australia holds the record for the world's highest penetration by population, more cruisers per head than any other nation. And you know, most of them started their love of cruising on a P&O ship.
I'm not surprised to hear that, Peter.
I remember sitting on the pool deck of the Pacific Eden. Remember her?
Yeah, I do.
Now operating by the German line Nico Cruises, so still alive and kicking. And seeing the multi-gen Australian families enjoying some downtime and realising that these people were loving their precious holiday on this ship because it was the best value they could find.
Can you explain that a little further, Peter?
Sure. They paid perhaps $450 a person. They got 3 meals a day, entertainment, a comfortable cabin for 3 or 4 days, all the amenities of the ship, the bars, the restaurants, pools, games, kids' clubs, fitness clubs. And they could relax with their kids, their grandparents, and know everyone was being looked after.
Which is precisely what I mentioned earlier. That for me was the joy of it, is that connection and the multi-generational side of it. It's
Absolutely.
pretty amazing.
I interviewed the CEO of Carnival Corporation, which is a $35 billion company, by the way. Christine Duffy came down to Australia personally to deliver the bad news about P&O Australia. And she explained that the problem was P&O Australia was just simply not something she could expand. Under the Carnival brand, she can bring as many ships as the market needs into Australia without having to go to the enormous cost of repainting the ships.
So it was a P&O Australia was the standalone brand of just 3 ships. So I do get it, but Carnival is different. And the fun ships are for families with younger kids.
Yes, they're lots of fun. Yes, I'll never forget being on the 3-deck dining room of a Carnival ship as scores of waiters danced on the tables and then the lights go down.
Oh.
And hundreds of baked Alaskas with burning brandy are marched into the room for dessert.
I'm picturing what could go horribly wrong. Waiters on the tables, burning brandy. But you paint a great picture. It just sounds incredibly memorable, really.
Yeah, you got to love cruising. And we do. So what has gone wrong with Australia's love affair with cruise?
Well, here we are today, Peter. cruisepassenger.com.au and our social channels are awash with people concerned as our great cruising nation wonders exactly that. What has gone wrong?
Well, we will hear from Joel Katz of Clear, as we mentioned, but from our own investigations, this is the problem. Cruise lines today, thanks to the pandemic ban on cruising, are in debt to banks to the tune of billions of dollars.
Ooh.
And I do mean billions.
Some people thought that they were rolling in it, but it's not the case.
The numbers are truly eye-watering.
Oh dear.
They need to pay off those debts by cruising in the most profitable regions.
That does make sense.
We've got the highest port costs in the world. And if you go over to cruisepassenger.com.au, you'll see the table we created, which shows that it costs $219,000 a day to dock Quantum of the Seas in Sydney.
Okay.
But only $22,000 in Barcelona, or $93,000 in Miami, or $53,000 in Rome, or $95,000 in Alaska.
Oh, my goodness.
And what's more, those prices are going up on July 1 by another $28,000 a day.
Well, that's highway robbery in my book. But Peter, we need to ask the question, why?
Why indeed? Great question. Is it greed? Is it special port costs? We've asked and we are yet to get a response.
So let's bring in our special guest, Joel Katz, Managing Director of Cruise Lines International Association, which speaks for the cruise lines here in our region. And Joel, it's great to see you.
Yeah, hi Joel.
Good morning. Good to be with you both.
So we've just been talking really about some of the implications of the change, if you like, in the environment around cruise here in Australia. Great demand, much enthusiasm for the product, but from the cruise line's perspective, over-regulation and cost too high. So seeing that capacity cut back. Why do you feel this is happening?
Look, this is not something that's new. This has been building over a number of years. We've been talking to all levels of government and states and territories and the ports around the country about what has been seen as a growing issue. We know that we are a very expensive part of the world to operate in. We've always been a very expensive part of the world to operate in. But that, compounded by our weak exchange rate, compounded by some of the global events, which make those repositioning voyages even more challenging. And then, of course, the increasing, I suppose you could say, uncertainty in the regulatory environment here just makes it a hard region for our cruise lines to commit to.
Joel, would you say that, I mean, personally, I think it's quite heartbreaking and the impact on people who simply love to cruise, as well as the tourism bodies that will be affected by this. But it's heartbreaking because the demand here is so high and yet the capacity is being, restricted as such. Has there been much reaction from those at the forefront of this, the travel agents and the members?
Look, we've always had an incredibly passionate cruise community here, from the travel advisors through to the more than 1.25 million Australians who cruise each year, and then that enormous supply chain of around 18,000 Australians who support the industry and are supported by the industry. So there is huge passion, and naturally there is huge concern. So many livelihoods, so many Australians' preferred holiday choice is as you explained, is the supply is contracting. We know the demand is there, and we're saying to the government at all levels, we really need to come together and have a national strategy around cruising. Post-COVID, we've never had as much engagement as we've had with all different levels of government as we have now. We have regular meetings with key government agencies. We have regular engagement at the ports, at the state level, but we need them all to come together. We need to look at the overall picture and what do we do to drive this important part of the tourism economy here in Australia.
I think that's a great idea, Joel. What we're seeing, I think, is a number of measures that nobody's pulled together to see the combined effect on an industry. And I think a summit would be a really, really great way to explain to people that there is obviously a compounding impact on the cruise industry. I was reading yesterday about in New Zealand. As we know, New Zealand's been very, very greatly impacted by the predicted curtailment capacity. Auckland, for instance, it will be really, really hard to sail out of Auckland on a home-ported ship. You'll probably have to fly to Sydney and of course those areas like the Bay of Plenty where the cruise industry does such great work in creating, I know, an indigenous market where people were trained and had that ready market of cruise ships arriving so their kids could actually learn crafts and then sell those crafts to cruise passengers. They are in despair because they built all this hope around the cruise industry. And if the cruise industry does not continue to come, then those industries and those great crafts they've been preserving run the risk of actually dying out. So those real stories are the ones that are most heartbreaking. New Zealand biolaw is obviously a problem, and nobody is disputing the bio laws are good. We want to preserve environments. The cruise industry is very, very keen to do that. But there is nowhere, as I understand it, where you can actually get your hull cleaned to New Zealand specifications, yet the law was imposed.
Yeah, so you're exactly right, Peter. As an industry, we're absolutely supportive, of the local regulations and absolutely ready and happy to comply. The challenge is how do we do that? And we've had some meetings with the New Zealand government already. We're hoping to have some more meetings. We're looking at technologies that are in place around the world. What are other ports doing? What's the best practice in other parts of the world, which do have equally as strict rules? And how can we bring that sort of technology as it develops, or those solutions to this part of the world? But in the meantime, as you explained, it is another challenge that the cruise lines have, and particularly for those ships that are based here year round, where they don't have the opportunity to go to other parts of the world where there may be the dry docks or other facilities that allow them to do that in-depth cleaning that's needed.
Yeah, really important.
Now, Joel, I need to ask, for our listeners sitting at home and all the cruise fans, people who are excited about cruising just, really starting to pick up again and that availability that's now going to be restricted. What would your advice be for travellers and the general public? Is there any say they have in the matter? Is it a case of, look, just book early and hold your breath, or try not to lose any hope that these bodies will get it together and perhaps have a summit? I mean, what is your advice for the general traveller?
Look, firstly, I just want to say, look, it's not doom and gloom. We still have a very, very active, robust cruise industry here in Australia. If we look at the numbers that we're expecting at the end of this year, it's still going to be one of the biggest seasons we've ever had.
Oh, great.
In terms of passenger visit days to ports and destinations around the country. Absolutely, the number of ships that are coming in the 25-26 season will be down. But at the same time, we know that the average size of the ships is slightly bigger. So again, to some extent, the decline in ships will be offset by an increase in the number of guests that they carry. So, it's not doom and gloom. We also know that the industry is very cyclical. We know that there are 63 ships in the pipeline The cruise industry is investing, almost $50 billion in new tonnage. So the industry is growing globally, and those ships will need to be deployed in different parts of the world. So firstly, I just want to say it's not
doom and gloom. There won't be cruise fans rioting in the streets anytime soon. We can
So we're cautiously optimistic that we definitely need to work with the government. We need to work with the ports and destinations, because we need to get those settings right so that it's a welcoming environment for cruise, and that the cruise lines can operate in a confident way in our region. But to your question, firstly, of course, fly cruise is an option. I mean, the ships are still out there, and they're still operating everywhere in the world. And we know a huge percentage of Australians do travel overseas to cruise. So that is always, of course, an option. But by the same token, we've still got a significant amount of ships in this part of the world. Most of the major brands will still be represented here through the peak season. We will still have year-round ships. We've still got a vibrant Kimberley season. So my message to the consumer is, go to a clear accredited travel agent. Book your cruise early. Get the cabin you want. Get the best price that you can get, and have an incredible cruise, because we have such an amazing destination to offer.
So that's really great advice. And actually, book up early is exactly the advice we're giving our readers. Get in quickly. Make sure you've got your cabin. I mean, look, there is no doubt that in 2 years' time, if cruise companies stick to the trajectory they have, we will be down on numbers. I mean, you're right. Of course, we're getting a number of ships, and a significant number, but with P&O closing and a number of ships that are now not coming here, Royal Caribbean only having a Princess having 2, Royal Caribbean having 2. That Princess is a significant difference because they had 5, and they are our most popular cruise line. They win many of our awards at Cruise Passenger when we do them. So there is a real concern there, and I think all of the things that you're doing hopefully will convince Miami that perhaps Australia is a much better place to cruise than they think at the moment. That's our hope, anyway.
Look, we know that our region scores incredibly highly on their Net Promoter Scores for all the ships that operate. There's no doubt that the cruise lines know that this is a prime part of the world. We even saw that in the P&O announcement with Carnival saying, this really gives them an opportunity to market those ships to the international market, because that's what people want to do. They want to come down to this part of the world. We already have between 200,000 and 300,000 international visitors who come here to cruise each year.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
We're really working with our sister associations and the broader travel industry to get more people to come down to this part of the world to cruise. And I think we have such passionate cruisers here. We have, as I said, we have one of the highest market penetrations in the world still. So all those indications are really positive. We just need to get the settings right so that it's a welcoming environment.
That's right. And maybe perhaps add that to the list of advice for any Aussies who are listening in. Number one, just keep being your welcoming self to all of our international cruise visitors, as we do very well here in Australia. And also, as you mentioned earlier, it's possibly a case of managing expectations when you do book your cruise, that it could be more about the larger cruise ships, and that would be the type of cruise that you can expect, less of the exclusive smaller cruise experiences and more intergenerational or family group bookings in the very near future, at least.
Yeah, and look, I must also point out that we do have a really strong representation of all the brands here. So from the smaller luxury expedition through to the larger family style cruising. And interestingly, when we look at that forward pipeline of new ships, it's about a third small, a third medium, a third large. So there really is interest in all different segments of the industry, which is great.
Yeah, no, I quite agree. There's been a big lift in interest in small ships. And our Kimberley season, I think, is at a record. We've got 3 new lines sailing in the Kimberley, including Seabourn. It'll be really fascinating to see how that plays out. It's an extraordinarily popular area of the world and of expedition fleets everywhere.
Yes, and exactly. And together with the cruise lines, we're working with the Western Australian government to make sure that growth is happening in a sustainable way. What the appeal of expedition destinations is the fact that they are remote and unique. And obviously, the first priority for everybody is to maintain that. So we're really excited that because of all the marketing that the cruise lines are doing, we're now seeing that Kimberley destination have that international appeal. But it is about that collaboration and that partnership with the destination to make sure it's done.
Well, Joel, I've got to say you've successfully destroyed my vision of loyal cruise fans rioting in the streets about this news.
Well, they're rioting online, Rose.
They are rioting online.
I think Joel's very well aware that we've had hundreds, if not actually thousands of comments on every story we've done. There's an enormous groundswell of feeling that something needs to be done. I know several people are, and we're running a bit of a petition so that we can show the government that there is this feeling that something's done. We'd love to get behind the summit idea, Joel, because that just makes absolute sense to get all of these laws in a line.
Absolutely. And that is another way that people, general public and loyal cruise fans can have a say is through Cruise Passenger. This is where the debate is happening, and people who are curious or concerned, this is where the latest news will be the hub for all the info that you need as it progresses. But you've given us some good news to work with today, Joel. Very grateful for your time.
Yep. Thank you very much indeed. Great to talk to you, and we'll be following this story, obviously, so I'm sure we'll talk again.
Thank you. Thanks, both.
Well, I guess there we have it, Peter. It looks like there actually is also a real human cost to this dilemma for the cruise situation.
There certainly is. Regional ports, suppliers like farmers and wineries, they've all invested heavily in the growth of cruise. Some $5 billion in trade and tens of thousands of jobs will go if we can't keep our cruise industry growing.
So it's not just the loyal cruise fans who are concerned, but the hip pocket of all of our providers and the people who have built their industries around cruise. And yes, we are getting hundreds of thousands of cruises coming in from overseas.
New Zealand will lose all of its turnaround business, meaning New Zealanders will need to fly to Sydney to take a cruise.
They won't be happy about that, Peter.
They are already unhappy, Rose, I can tell you.
Okay, well, there is a lot riding on persuading the governments here and in New Zealand to be more welcoming.
Well, yes. But, Rosie, I have to say my talk with Christine Duffy and my exclusive interview with the new boss of Carnival Australia, Peter Little, leads me to believe that there has been a big decision taken in Miami, home of the cruise industry. It costs a lot to send a ship to Australia. For places like the Caribbean and North America, it's much easier to cruise. The Med makes lots of money for cruise, and despite reports of overcrowding, they are making it work. Until Australia and New Zealand can create a more welcoming environment, we might see higher prices and fewer ships.
And that really is such a shame, as we've mentioned, for the ports and the suppliers who've built their businesses on a growing cruise market. So much hope and expectation has been happening. Okay, well, we'll be bringing you plenty more on this and other cruise stories as they happen. You can sign up for our newsletter at cruisepassenger.com.au and subscribe to our magazine at the website.
Yes, now more than ever, if you love cruise, you should sign up for our newsletters and site bulletins.
And on a brighter note, on River Cruise Site this week, we are offering a $25,000 Avalon Cruise prize. You could be sailing down the Danube in luxury.
Oh, yes, please.
But that's all we have time for today. We'll be back soon with a wonderful podcast on luxury line Regent Seven Seas, one of my favourites, and more on our campaign for the River Cruise Collective.
Our biggest ever magazine is on sale now. 150 pages of brilliant cruise and travel with a Mediterranean magazine inside and a special report on Antarctica, plus 22 pages on river cruising.
As you can see here, it's a stunning magazine. My favourite is our headline, Nile High Club. You can find out how to join. But that is all we have. As we said, we can't wait to see you again next time.
See you soon.